it's epidemic. It's all across the board. We've really just lost the battle when it's come to issues like that in our classrooms and across our country. And you wonder, these kids are getting indoctrinated, and your and my tax dollars are paying for it, and that's something we've got to deal with. Because this tonight will be you've got 37% of Democrats saying they want Biden to run again. What you'll see is if you look on the row, I'm going to try to get on the row because I want to sit right on the row and look at the president when he walks in. But if you look on the row, you won't see any moderate Democrats sitting on the row where the president walks in because they don't want their picture. That is very telling. When Trump was in office, you had Democrats that were trying to get close to the aisle because they knew he was more popular than any other Democrats in their district. You won't see a lot of that on this. You'll see some hardcore liberals and some people like me are just hard-headed that just want to sit on the aisle, like me and Matt Gaetz and some others if we can get there and get our seat.
I've long said, Tim, I've long said that the most dangerous place on earth is between Sheila Jackson Lee and that row of seats during a State of the Union address when a Democrat's in office, because I don't know how she does it, but she gets on there, boy. She believes in that FaceTime. Describe to people who don't understand how that happens, that you have to get the seat, you have to get there as early as possible, right?
That's correct. And they used to say you can't put anything in your seat and hold it, but they've since gone back on that. And they've had in the past they've made staffers come sit there but the trick is to find out when the last time they go through with the bomb dogs, and after that it's a free for all. If you can get there right then and get there, I mean, people will literally sit in those seats 5-6 hours before the president before the State of the Union, so they can get that 30 seconds of national TV time, which amounts to absolutely nothing politically, but I guess in your mind. In the old days, I guess that was a big deal, but now with social media, it's not that big of a deal. But that's the way it works out. And the old timers will sit down there, and some people will have stuff they want signed by the president, for their district, and other things. I had a UT hat one time, and he looked at me and goes, I said, I said to Trump, I said, Mr. President, Tennessee loves you, and he said, Tim, I love Tennessee, and he grabbed my hat. And he signed it on the bill of it, and I thought that was kind of cool. But you won't see much of that tonight. It's a lot of showmanship, and you're right. It's just a campaign ad, and unfortunately for President Biden, he just doesn't realize that his party has left him, and just his failed policies, and the only people that are sticking by him are the hardcore leftists. Unfortunately, that makes up a lot of people on our college campuses that are running our schools, and some people in the swamp, but the average American just shakes their head at these failed policies and $32 trillion in debt. And this, I mean, his press secretary, good gosh, I haven't watched Saturday Night Live in years, but she's a Saturday Night Live skit every night when she opens her mouth.
It's insane. I mean, we have the clip that I think you're referring to from yesterday. Her explanation or attempt at an explanation as to how the Biden administration knows about these 3 balloon passings that no one in the Trump administration claims to have known about whatsoever, and it's just beyond ludicrous. Let me ask you this, and Congressman Tim Burchett is our guest. Is there anything that Joe Biden will present to the American people tonight as an agenda item that Republicans will get behind? Anything at all?
Well, unless he says we're going to work together on the budget situation, he's Kevin McCarthy's played it like a pro. He didn't go in there and rub his nose in. He just said, "Look, we got a problem. Let's work on it." And so, how do you respond to that? He's saying, "Yeah, we're going to work together." But I suspect he'll push the budget situation on us. He'll make reference to Trump several times when he's in a bind. That's their go-to thing. And if anything, that is where compromise will be reached. But you got to realize on the budget situation where we keep saying they're going to blame us for shutting the government down, which I say shut it down. It's that important. Every time we reach an agreement on this, and there's always long-scale, long-term reductions that they work into these things. The problem is they don't honor their word. We got 365 days in a fiscal year. I think last year we ran it to about 290, and we ran out of money because we didn't keep our word. And every time the conservatives they compromise and say, okay, we'll put those in, but we'll allow you to raise the amount of spending. And every time they overspend. Every time. We've got to just say enough is enough. We've got really three things in our country that should scare the American public. One is this dadgum deficit spending. 2, China. 3 is our education system. Those 3 things are going to knock us out, long term, short term, whatever you want to call it. And until we fix those things, we're going to keep spiraling downhill. And we've got to say enough is enough. We got to tell these colleges and universities, quit promoting this leftist agenda. Quit allowing the communist Chinese influence in our school systems. Quit the deficit spending, and then other things will take care of themselves. But until we address those 3 things, we're going to still be going downhill.
You know, one of the things I'm looking forward to tonight, and there are very few, by the way, Tim, but it is an occupational hazard that we watch these speeches, despite who might be delivering them, is tone. Because I think it's clear that the majority of Democrats across the United States of America do not want Joe Biden to run for a second term. It's pretty clear to me that the party elites would love to find a reason why Joe Biden doesn't run for a second term. But what I hear, party insiders say that he's got it inside of his head, and Jill has it inside of her head, that they will attempt to run for a second term. And I believe that we can discover from tone alone where he is at in that thought process. Because, one would think that he's not deaf enough to not hear what his own party people are saying, right?
Correct. You're correct. But I keep saying this, 20 million so-called evangelical Christians decide to stay home this last election. That's why Joe Biden's in the White House. Regardless if you think they stole it or not, we got to put enough points on the board where they can't steal it. And we refused. We've got to start working, the mail-in ballots, all that other stuff. That horse is out of the barn, brother. We have got to realize that is the rules and regulations. Let's start operating under their rules and regulations, and let's get in there and fight it out with them, and we can win. But until we address those kind of things, we're not going to get there. I just don't see it. And across this country, I hope the public proves me wrong. But I called the head of the Southern Baptist Convention, and I told him this one of these last votes that we took that was just something to me was just incredible. And basically, it had very little to do with the issue that everybody was discussing. It had the issue with of taking the tax exempt status from churches and literally shutting their doors. And the head of the Southern Baptist Convention told me, he said, well, that was at Christmas. It was between Thanksgiving and Christmas, and that is our busy time. And I told him, I said, well, you're not going to be very busy when they deadbolt your doors. And that's the kind of thing we got to address. We got to address as a nation and in our community, because we're not right now. We're sitting on our hands. We just letting, and they're not going to steal it from us. We're going to give it to them. Mm-hmm. We are just giving it to them every time we turn around. We don't take the fight to them. And I'll tell you this, McCarthy, he's showing a lot of ultra conservatives wrong right now, because he has taken the fight to them on every issue, and I'm glad of it, because we have, for too long, the Republicans have just sat here and took it, and that's not getting us anywhere. It's not helping our country, and we have got to address these things.
Great stuff, Congressman. Thank you for spending some time with us, attempting to preview what we anticipate will be a speech chock full of lies and half-truths. Before I let you go, though, one specific on this issue of China that you brought up. It is an embarrassment, to say the least, that we allowed a Chinese spy balloon to spend the time over the United States of America that it did. What, if anything, can the House do now that it is in Republican control to investigate and get to the bottom of what the Biden administration knew when they knew it? These lies and nonsense about, this has happened in the past, trying to deflect what was obviously a political and not just a political embarrassment, but a very serious security concern for the United States of America.
Oh, 100%. When General Milley was told by the president to shoot it down, he told him, no, we're not going to do that. We're going to wait. I think that's very telling. I think he's compromised. I don't trust his opinion. I don't think he's a traitor, but I don't think his thought process is where it needs to be. I forget he was former head of CIA under Obama, and his chief of staff. His name escapes me right now.
But Brennan or Clapper? I think No,
under Obama.
Oh,
under
Obama. I got you.
Yeah. Anyway, his son's in Congress with you now. Anyway, respected Democrat, he even said we should have knocked it down when we saw it off the coast of Alaska. We knew what they were doing, and this is just ridiculous. And to think that I said, we ought to let the Chinese get the State of the Union address. They already know. They've flown. They know exactly what it's all about right now because they've flown over the top of us. And for us to just allow that to happen, I think is just a ridiculous reason they've given. A 7-mile debris trail. It's a balloon, for goodness sakes. Well, anyway, they waited till it got into the salt water. They knocked it down. If you know anything about electronics, when you get in salt water, it's going to limit our ability to pull any data out of that. They've already got all the data as it flew over the country. It just sends a bad signal. The Chinese are just playing chess, and we're playing checkers. We allowed that to go. They know we allowed it to do it. We know that our military our leadership in our military, not our fighting men and women, do not have the guts and the thought process to knock something like that down. It could have been knocked down. Look, it could have been knocked down. I talked to the congressman from Montana yesterday. He said, look, Tim, if you'd have knocked it down over Montana, is less populated, you're more likely to hit a boat off the coast of Myrtle Beach than you are to hit somebody in Montana. It was ridiculous. We have computer models to show if we'd have hit that thing where it would have dropped. We can land an Apollo. We know where the Apollo capsule is going to land within a football field in the Pacific Ocean, for goodness sakes. And that was in the 70s. Dadgummit, we could tell where a balloon the size of two city buses would land. It's just ridiculous.
Instead, the communist Chinese spend 4 days giving the United States of America the middle finger, essentially.
Absolutely. They just thumbed their nose at us, flipped us a bird, whatever you want to say. They did that, and they showed we have weak leadership from the top. And to think that the general, this is the thing that the people would better realize, a general told the president of the United States, no, we're not going to knock it down.
It's the most disturbing. It's the most disturbing aspect of all of this.
And Milley is the one under Trump who has
called the Chinese
negotiations with the Chinese, and that's why I'm saying I feel like he's compromised. The Chinese have infiltrated our schools, our places of influence. Secretary Pompeo told me, I had breakfast with him, I guess, a little over 6 months ago, and he said, Tim, they know how many paper clips we use in the Longworth building. They collect data and numbers, and now we've got U.S. senators saying, oh well, these TikTok videos. We're negotiating with the Chinese right now to ensure that they're not taking data from those. I mean, what planet are these people on?
It's ridiculous.
How deep is their infiltration? I feel like everybody's compromised. These people are compromised, and you better wake up about what's going on in your country.
Tim, love it. Got to leave it there. We're way late, but I appreciate you. No, listen. I love it, and I love talking with you because I appreciate your passion. We'll do it again very soon. Enjoy tonight as much as you can.
You got it. Save our country, brother. Go get them.
We will do everything we can. There's Congressman Tim Burchett, quickly becoming my favorite conversation from the halls of the House of Representatives. We're late, 12:25. We're just getting started on Super Talk. Hey, friends, Matt Murphy. Let's talk about your health, especially if you're a fella or if you know a fella. Maybe there's one in your life and he's gotten sluggish or a little, a step or a step and a half behind. Maybe it's a matter of not wanting to do yard work. Maybe it's a matter of not wanting to get to the gym and do some exercise. Maybe it's something else. Maybe it's bedroom activity. Whatever it might be, did you know with a simple visit to Tennessee Men's Clinic, we could get some numbers for you to correctly analyze exactly what's going on with you. We can get a PSA test gone. We can get a testosterone test taken care of. And if that testosterone turns out low, Tennessee Men's Clinic has a multiple-tiered solution for you. What that means is there are different solutions in terms of where your level might be to get you back up to a level that's right, that's going to give you that energy that you've enjoyed over the years. You know, it's natural that men's testosterone goes down over time. There's nothing wrong with it, and there's nothing that you've done. There's no shame involved, but we need to get that level back up, and we need to know what it is before we can do that. Tennessee Men's Clinic is the place to go. They're the only one that I would recommend. TennesseeMen'sClinic.com. Convenient to anywhere within the sound of my voice. TennesseeMen'sClinic.com. Or give them a call. 208-9090. That's 615-208-9090 for Tennessee Men's Clinic.
Hi, I'm Paul Winkler. I've been teaching investing on Nashville airwaves for over 20 years with the Investor Coaching Show. And in that time, I taught a lot about how markets work and how we invest money and academic principles of investing money. But I've also talked an awful lot about how to avoid the mistakes that people often make with their money. Think about it. A lot of people sold out of the market at the worst time when COVID struck, or when TARP happened, the Troubled Asset Relief Program, or gold, they invested in that at the worst time. Bailing out of the market because they were worried about Y2K or 9/11 or jumping into energy stocks or jumping into cryptocurrency. One of the things that I like to do is educate investors because I believe that the more educated you are, the more confident you are, and the more confident you are, the more successful you can be as an investor. Now, I not only do that on our radio show, but we do that in our offices around the Nashville region, 10 offices. To learn more about our approach to investing and financial planning, go to paulwinkler.com and set up a free 15-minute phone call. Or you can call 615-851-1950.
Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Hello. Welcome back to your radio show of choice during this time, 12:30. It is also now your television viewing of choice. You can find us on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Twitch. Thank you to Paul Winkler. He is the founder of That Feast. It's brought to you by Paul Winkler, Inc., and we appreciate him. It's 12:30.
Your head shrank.
Well, is it smaller?
Yeah.
Okay, good. I mean, Ian was working on that. We were trying to, the further back I can get from, I mean, it would be better if I was back here. Can you still hear me? Is that good?
Yeah, just yell.
Yeah. Anyway, working on that side of things for those of you choosing the visual route over the audio route. And you can do both on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter. You can do all of these things minus the video on 99.7 on your radio dial. How about that? All right, we ran late with Congressman Tim Burchett. When we return, we will crank up the Matt Murphy Sloppy Joe lie detector test, where I will present to you at least, I've got 6 different things that I would suggest to you that Joe Biden is preparing to lie about tonight, and we will put that through the lie detector test and see if it passed muster. 1231. It is Super Talk 99.7 WTN. As we're listening to the weather forecast, we recognize that if you don't like the weather in Tennessee, just wait a day or two. It will change from hotter conditions to cooler conditions this time of year. You're putting a lot of strain on that heating and air conditioning unit of yours. And if it's not running as it should, I have a name for you, and that is Jeff Eddy and Efficient Heating and Cooling. Jeff Eddy was one of the first individuals that I met with the possibility of having the opportunity to tell you about a wonderful company like his. And I was all in from the day that I met him. Jeff believes in doing it the right way every time with every customer that he serves. He wants you, your family, to be repeat customers time and time again and to pass on that information to your loved ones. That's why he guarantees the work that he does. He makes sure that he maintenances your unit for less than $125 on every residential call. So here's the deal. No matter how many units you have, it's $125. Sometimes it's a lot less than that. And when it comes time to replace, you know that he's telling you what you need to hear. Not what you want to hear, but you need to hear. And he is a diamond contractor with Mitsubishi Electric, an Elite Pro partner with Rheem. Go to efficienthvac.net for more information. efficienthvac.net or 615-784-4424, 784-4424 for Efficient Heating and Cooling. Well, pardon me. I was losing valuable airtime responding to a super texter explaining how I pronounce February. I pronounce it the proper fashion. February. It's February, it's diapers, and it's vegetables. And that's a hill I'll die on. It's 1236 Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Thank you for being with us. If you desire to call in or super text, you may do so. The numbers, I give them often and as quickly as possible just to keep you on your toes. 615-737-9986. We are experimenting. This started last week with yours truly in our show in the midday. It then extended to Brian Wilson. Eventually, Nashville's Morning News got in on the act, and now all four local shows from 5A to 7P are broadcasting simulcast on a variety of platforms that involve video. You can find us on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, or Twitch. Those are the four platforms that I understand that we're on. We're trying to get a technology together, and I think Ian and his team are on top of this, that will put in one spot all of your communications. So those of you watching on a platform of your choosing, let's say it's Facebook or YouTube, if you make a comment there, I'll be able to see it in one place without having to go to 4 or 5 different places. So it gives you yet another avenue to communicate and offer your opinion on the topics of the day. And we're appreciative of all of the hard work being done by our engineering staff. Regardless, I mean, they can't help what you see. They can help how you see it. What you see is, it's kind of what you get. But it could be worse. We're working on that 2-shot between Bel K and myself, so we'll have that up and running before you know it.
You can thank me now.
What, for not allowing that, to stymieing that in every technical way possible?
Well, just there's no reason to subject the audience to that.
I don't know.
I mean, it's bad enough having to look at you. We don't need to double down.
I can think of one or two. You want, just off the top of my head. Make ugly people feel better about themselves.
Yeah, I think that's not going to work.
I mean, that's a good reason to have you on camera, right?
That'll have no impact.
No? Oh, well, I figured I'd give it a shot. All right, so the President of the United States will stand before Congress. Most of you will not watch. I understand that, because it has become a decidedly partisan event where any Republicans and a hell of a lot of Democrats watching Joe Biden tonight are watching to fact-check him on the myriad of lies that we expect to hear and see coming out of his mouth when he speaks before the nation. I imagine that there's never been a time when these speeches have not been in some fashion partisan. I don't remember a time in my life. You guys tell me if I'm wrong. Has there ever been a time in our lives where the President of the United States comes out and says, because they do the standard, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Speaker, assembled members of Congress, the American people, thank you very much. I am pleased to report to you that the state of the union is strong. They always say that, or some version of that. And sometimes we know it's Bravo Sierra. We know that it's garbage, but they say it anyway.
Like tonight.
Like tonight. Joe Biden will come out tonight, and he will declare a lot of different things that aren't so. And so we figured out we'd do this in advance of the speech so you don't have to watch it necessarily. And oh, by the way, much like #NeverCNN is an occupational hazard for me, much like I watch MSNBC and some of these other garbage networks so you don't have to, yes, I will watch the State of the Union tonight so you don't have to. I don't expect that a lot of Democrats are going to watch this thing either because it's cringy. Even when he's on teleprompter, it's cringy. So when Joe stands before Congress tonight, it'll be so, I'll say this. It is worth it for nothing else than to watch a State of the Union without having to look at Nancy Pelosi sitting behind the President of the United States. Is that not a glorious thing? I mean, we'll still have to deal with Kamala back there, but no Nancy. Kevin McCarthy back there? Come on. That's good. And he has done a great job. I agree with Congressman Tim Burchett. But when he stands before Congress and issues this State of the Union, he's going to declare victory. Now, he will declare victory on a number of fronts. So what we have can we test this real quick? Can you give me a test of the lie detector? So we have the Matt Murphy, Bel K and I worked long into the night to create this lie detector machine that will, in an unbiased, nonpartisan fashion, because I understand, I'm partisan. I'm not objective. I'm subjective. So we wanted to try to do this as scientifically as possible. So we have put together what we're calling the Matt Murphy Sloppy Joe lie detector. And we go to the lie detector after I present to you what I believe will be Joe Biden's presentation, and we get a response. And this is what the lie detector will sound like. If it detects a lie, this is what it sounds like.
You're a damn liar, man. That's not true.
Sorry, wrong effect.
I actually like that one pretty good, too. Joe telling Joe that he's a liar. What does it sound like? Okay, there's your lie detector. All right, so we'll crunch the numbers. Beep, boop, beep, boop, beep, boop, boop, beep, boop, boop, beep, boop, beep, boop, boop. Oh, that's a good idea for next year. I just thought of that. We should have it like crunching the numbers, like those old school.
Actually working on that, trying.
Oh, were you really?
I didn't have time.
You know what I'm talking about, though?
Yes,
back
I know exactly
in the
what you
60s or 70s, if a computer was working on something, there was always
like
the
$6 Million Man and the tapes are turning.
And the reel-to-reel machines are going around. And then eventually a little piece of paper comes out.
One of those little cards.
Hey, like, what is this? What did we figure out? It's a punch card, like a hanging Chad machine. Okay, so the job market is strong, okay? That's good news. But the economy is not, and that's the reality. So here are 6 things that I've put together with my help, with help from my buddies at the New York Post. 6 items that would indicate that the last 2 years have been pretty bad on every scale and by every metric. There's a squeeze on your budget. Inflation is out of control. Immigration, illegal immigration primarily, out of control. Our school systems are not working. The budget deficit, out of control. Debt, out of control. And so where will the president of the United States be on these? Item number 1 for consideration by the Matt Murphy Sloppy Joe lie detector. Can I get you're a damn liar, man? Just because it makes me...
You're a damn liar, man.
Yeah.
That's not true.
Okay, so that'll indicate we're going from one to another. Joe Biden will claim that he has reduced the deficit tonight. He will make the claim that in his first 2 years that he has reduced the budget deficit by $1.4 trillion with a T dollars. Now, here's how he gets away. Now, before I explain how he gets away with that, let's go ahead and sync that into the lie detector machine, the Matt Murphy Sloppy Joe lie detector. Joe Biden says he has reduced the budget deficit by $1.4 trillion. Wait for it now. No, that's not true. That's not true. No president in our lifetimes have come close to Joe Biden's fiscal irresponsibility. In his first 2 years in office, the national debt has risen. I want you to listen to this for a second. In Joe Biden's first 2 years in office as president of the United States, now he can blame others all he wants. The national debt has risen by $4 trillion. Now, if you want to play whataboutism, I understand that Donald Trump was no fiscal conservative. Obama, far from it. George W., no. I mean, gosh, the last time we came close to a balanced budget on any annual year was Bill Clinton and the Republican House of Representatives. So $4.2 trillion, to be precise, is more added to the national debt than in any 2-year period in American history. The deficit shot into the stratosphere of $2.8 trillion in his first year in office. Now, that's where Joe Biden gets the tricky math from. His first year in office, the national deficit was $2.8 trillion. That's added to the national debt. His second year in office, his deficit is $1.4 trillion. Ooh, but do that math. We went from 2.8 to 1.4, so he claims – I can't do this with a straight face. He claims that he has shrunk the national deficit, a deficit that he created to the point of $2.8 trillion by $1.4 trillion, because that means it's only $1.4 trillion this year. Does that make sense to everyone?
That's all you got to do is explode the deficit and then cut it, and you're a hero.
Right. In other words, if I overspend on my monthly budget by $100 this month, and next month I only overspend by $50, I go to my banker and I explain to them that I have cut my deficit by $50. Aren't you proud of me? You're still overspending. Doesn't matter. So that does not meet the smell test with regard to the lie detector. What does the lie detector say about that there, Bill? Yeah, that's what I thought. That's a lie. Number
You're
two.
lying dog-faced pony soldier.
Yes, sir, Mr. President. We're getting to you in just a moment. Number two, Joe Biden will claim tonight, you can hear it as plain as day, that they inherited an economy that was absolutely in free fall. Everything wrong with the economy today is the fault of Donald Trump. None of it the fault of Joe Biden. Now, forget the fact that Joe Biden signed on his first day in office some, was it 20-something executive orders? I think it was over 25 executive orders.
I think it was 27 or 20.
Yeah, I mean, it was in the 20s, right? So late 20s. He signed a bunch of executive orders rolling back almost every economic good that Donald Trump did during his 4 years as president of the United States. 3 and the COVID year. So when COVID hit in 2020, in early of that year, really late 2019, the economy was shut down by liberal governors and liberal activists within Washington, D.C., and Donald Trump was pressured by bad actors that he took in good faith, primarily Fauci. And so by the second half of 2020, the economy was in the pits, man. But Trump and other Republican governors, primarily, governors like, I wasn't here, and I know that Bill Lee gets dinged on shutting it down, but he opened up pretty quickly afterwards. Did he not, Bill?
That's
not Nashville, but the state.
Relatively, but still.
Right. It was too late for some, and it was not good enough for some because some businesses were destroyed and livelihoods were destroyed. I get that. But relatively speaking, comparatively to Illinois or California or Washington State or New York or Washington, D.C. or whatever, governors like Ron DeSantis and Kay Ivey and Bill Lee and others recognized the necessity of getting the economy going again. And so they did so. So by the second half of 2020, the economy roared back by more than 20%. Millions of Americans got back to work. Millions of Americans got back to their jobs. It was absolutely historic. Donald Trump created Operation Warp Speed that made that happen. Now, we can go over the ins and outs of COVID-19 all we want. But for Joe Biden to suggest and claim that he's responsible for the bounce back, that he inherited a government in a free fall, that is not true. The government was bouncing back. The data tells us this. We rate point number 2 on the Joe Biden, Matt Murphy, Sloppy Joe lie detector as a complete falsehood. Now, the economy could have continued to bounce back even more strongly than we've seen it limping around. Sadly, it's limping at an economic rate of about 1.5% right now. This is largely due to Joe Biden rolling back those economic policies of the Trump administration and not allowing business to get back to the business of business. In a moment, we'll get to number 3, 4, 5, and 6 on our list of Sloppy Joe lies, and we'll run them through the lie detector and see what we get. It's 1250 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Here we go. Super Talk 99.7 WTN, live and in person until 3 o'clock, where we hand off to The Drive and Brian Wilson from 3 until 7 o'clock. Brian did a great job. I hope you got a chance to listen. I know I did, as he broadcast from our state's capital in advance of the State address, something that we will we'll discuss certainly by hour number 3 and maybe into hour number 2, depending on how our time allotment is. Plus, I also want to do something else, Bell. I know we've got 4 other lies to tell and to feed through the Matt Murphy Sloppy Joe lie detector, something that Bell's been tinkering with during the break. But I was also inspired, Nashville's morning news is heading to D.C., at least a part of it. Dan Mandis is on his way there now. I don't know at what stage in the process he's in. I've not set anything up with Dan, but here's what I think we should do. We should call him. What do you think, Bell?
No, you'll just upset him.
No. I think we should call him. I can do it from in here if you want. I'll tell you what. We'll do top of the hour news, which is coming up in 20 seconds, and then no, I got your back. And then we'll call Mandis. Just out of the blue, live on radio, and see if he answers his phone. It's Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
From ABC News, I'm Michelle Franzen. In his State of the Union address tonight, the White House says President Biden will call for unity as the country faces economic challenges and national security threats abroad. ABC News contributor and former Republican Congresswoman Barbara Comstock says the president will try to bridge the big divide in Congress.
I think it's smart that he's doing this unity agenda. He's focusing on issues like fentanyl, mental health, veterans, the cancer moonshot that he's always been an advocate for, to unite Congress. Those are smart things.
A new ABC News Washington Post poll shows 4 in 10 Americans don't believe they're better off financially now than before the president took office. The death toll from the major earthquake in Turkey has jumped to more than 6,200. Search and rescue teams are digging through the rubble of collapsed buildings looking for survivors, and a humanitarian crisis is unfolding in war-torn Syria. ABC's Marcus Moore is near the border.
The UN estimating 6.9 million people are internally displaced in Syria.
We have information that hundreds of patients are still under the debris.
The earthquake adding another layer of suffering to the war-torn country. The Biden administration sending 2 search and rescue teams to Turkey.
A fire on board a United Airlines flight today, resulting in 4 people being sent to the hospital.
United Flight 2664 had just taken off from the San Diego airport when the pilots reported they had a fire on board. Air traffic control responding.
127 souls on board, copy.
The audio from Live ATC, the situation unfolding. The pilots were apparently not responding to the air traffic controller.
2664, do you see San Diego? Are you on the visual approach?
Eventually, he got a response, and it sounded like the pilots were on oxygen masks. They got the plane back to San Diego. An external battery pack caught fire, and flight attendants put it into a thermal containment bag.
The fire is out.
Alex Stone, ABC News.
You're listening to ABC News.
When you have difficulty with pain, it's hard to function or focus on anything else. And I want to spend about a minute with you talking about how to alleviate that pain without the need for popping pills and certainly without the consideration for surgery. I know when I first came to Nashville, I heard the Dr. Gill Center over and over again as a wonderful resource that we can utilize in our community to alleviate our pain in our back, in our spine, in our joints, in our knees, in our neck. I mean, everywhere that moves, it's going to cause a pressure point in your body, and eventually some of those places wear out to the point where you get a compression in your back or your spine. You get a malady that can be solved through chiropractic care, but oftentimes we start taking some of the pain medication over the counter and otherwise, and that leads us down a road that we don't want to go down. So I want you to call Dr. Gill and the Dr. Gill Center for Back, Neck, and Chronic Pain Relief in Franklin. They've been in business for over 30 years now. They brought decompression therapy to Middle Tennessee. They brought so many brand new technologies to this state to help alleviate your pain without the need for pain pills and certainly without the consideration for surgery. And now it's easier than ever. For $23, you can get in with the Dr. Gill Center. They'll give you complete x-rays, and they'll find out what ails you, and they'll go to work developing a solution for success. That's what it's all about. 794-0800 is the telephone number for that $23 special. 615-794-0800 is the Dr. Gill Center for Back, Neck, and Chronic Pain Relief. All right, here we are. Here we go. It's hour number 2 of the Matt Murphy Show on Super Talk 99.7 WTN as Bel K and I present what's going on in the world to you for the next hour or so by ourselves. Then we'll be joined by Mac Morey in the final hour, leading to the drive at 3 o'clock this afternoon. Live and local, information-fueled and opinion-driven on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. I'm already behind. I'm 4 behind on my sloppy Joe Biden lies in our lie detector, but I think we've got something good for you in hour number 2. Also in hour number 2, I've got, here's what I want to do. I want to finish up with the lies and Joe Biden's lie detector test for tonight's State of the Union address. Then, also in the midst of all of this, obviously, your super text and your telephone calls are always appreciated. If you want to dial in a direct fashion, you can do that, or super text us. You may do that as well. 615-737-9986. I'll give you an example, like Brandy super texted. And Brandy said, fix your hair, Matt.
What's wrong with your hair?
I don't know.
It's fine to me.
Brandy felt like it was apparently it was rather mussy at 12:50 and 1 in the p.m. Central Standard Time. Brandy, thank you for that. We are Brandy can see me due to our participation on Twitter, Twitch, Facebook, and YouTube. You can watch us live on any of those platforms, and you too can text me and tell me to fix what ails me. There's a lot of things that I'd like to fix about my head from the nipples up, but a lot of it's unfixable, sadly. Angie says, I seen you, Matt, yawning, but I still like the white shirt. Just say, well, it's not actually white.
Kind of beige.
Yeah, it comes off as white in the white hot spotlights of what has now become a television set. All right, we are in the midst of mucking through potential Sloppy Joe lies, and we have the Sloppy Joe lie detector to tell us when Sloppy Joe is lying about something.
A damn liar, man. That's not true.
No, you're the liar, Mr. President. Keep up. So we went through the budget deficit reduction lie. We inserted the economy in free fall lie. And now we're up to the inflation was high when Joe Biden entered office lie. We've heard, as Karine Jean-Pierre, a woman who is singularly awful at her job. Worse, I mean, I almost think a mime would be better. Or a mute. Someone who's mute, who has an inability to speak. Someone standing on the podium and signing sign language to people who don't understand sign language would communicate better than Karine Jean-Pierre. It's difficult for me to express how awful this woman is at her job. But she has repeatedly stated to us in a preview of what we can expect tonight that inflation was already high when Joe Biden entered office. Bell, go ahead and enter this into our system, our crackerjack scientific system. It is called the Matt Murphy Sloppy Joe Lie Detector. See what we get. That's nice. That's not. Well, it's not nice because it turned out it was a lie. But that's nice. I love the boo-boops. The boo-boops really make it, Bell. Thank you.
The boo-boops are for you, baby.
No, I appreciate that. I appreciate you adding the boo-boops. We see what we do here. We work on the fly. And in the midst of the lunch hour, Bell and I realized that as hard as he worked on the Sloppy Joe lie detector test, that we needed a couple of bee-boops. And Bell got them, and he inserted them, and you just heard them. Way to go, Bell. Thank you. Way to bee-boop. No. Inflation was not high during the Trump presidency. It's laughable, and it's easily provable a lie. During the Trump presidency, the inflation rate on average was 2%. In January of 2021, which was the month that Joe Biden entered office, the inflation rate was 1.4%. 18 months later, in the summer of 2022, inflation rose to 9%. Which is the highest inflationary rate in the last 40 years. It ended the year at 6.5%. And while Joe Biden thinks that you're dumb enough to believe that that's good, well, it's good by comparison to the 9 that it was, but it ain't good by comparison to the 1.4 that it was during Trump. Food prices are so dastardly high, not just eggs, but everything. That CNBC reported, according to an article in the New York Post, amid food inflation, shoppers have now started turning to dollar stores for groceries.
I can taste it.
My goodness gracious. Dollar stores? Dollar stores? Bell, at the risk of getting an answer, I'll ask you a question.
Okay.
You ever shop for groceries at the dollar store?
No, I've shopped for snacks.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't go in there and buy my groceries. That stuff's usually a little more expensive than if you go to a Kroger or whatever.
I would go to non-perishables, but I don't know that I would pull the trigger on. I stopped by the Dollar General, the old DG.
That's what I used to have by my apartment.
As Dane Cook would call it, the DG Lounge. I would go by the DG Lounge, and these were for non-perishable items, mind you. And I would often see individual, you can buy a tasty beverage in the DG Lounge. And I would watch as some would peruse the perishable aisle. Primarily, they have produce in the DG Lounge, which
No, the one I went to didn't.
They had like salads and stuff. Which
No, I'm not.
No.
Next, you'll be
There's
buying
something about
sushi
that.
from there.
Yeah, there's something about that. I can't manage to buy sushi anymore from Sam's Club.
Did you get sick off of it?
Well, I did it for a minute. For some reason, the Sam's Club in, Antioch?
Yeah.
The sushi taste, I'm not trying to cast aspersions. I'm just being honest. I would buy it from the Sam's Club in Hendersonville, and it tasted fine. I bought some from Antioch, and I felt like it had been there a week. And, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, I ain't doing it. All right. So inflation was not as high as it is today. And you see that. You cannot lie to people standing in a grocery store. And that is what we have going for us and what liberal Democrats have going against them. It's what Joe Biden has going against him. You cannot lie your way out of what I see on a regular basis at the grocery store or at the gas pump, which leads us to Joe Biden statement number 4. The President of the United States is anticipated to say tonight and declare for all to hear that he has brought down gasoline prices. Let's go ahead and slip that one into the Sloppy Joe lie detector and see what we get. That's a lie, too. That's a lie, too.
Didn't Karine say that he didn't control the gas prices at one point?
Yeah, the spin coming out of the White House changes from day to day. When it's good news,
it's all him.
It's all him. when it's bad news, we don't control that. It's oil companies. The oil companies are evil.
They're
and
greedy.
try as Joe Biden might to crush big oil, he cannot do so fast enough.
2 years they weren't greedy, but today they're greedy.
It's amazing to me what the Democrat logic is on this, right? When gasoline prices go down, it's all to their credit. When gasoline prices go up, it's all the evil oil companies. And when you go through the flow chart and you watch as gasoline prices go down, for example, during the Trump administration, when Donald Trump left office, gasoline prices were at $2.59 a gallon nationally. And by June of 2022, based solely on the decision-making of the Biden administration, gasoline prices had nearly doubled to a modern-day high of $5 nationally a gallon.
It was Putin's fault.
And that was Putin's fault. But then when it wasn't Putin's fault, it became the oil company's fault, which led me to the question, why do the oil companies support Republicans? Because the explanation is, well, they're doing that intentionally to make the Republicans look good so Republicans can win office because Republicans love big oil and they enrich big oil. And when Democrats get into office, they jack their prices up to hurt the Democrat.
So they don't want profits when the Republicans are in office, but when the Democrats, they do want profits.
No, walk through the illogic of a liberal. So the oil companies jack prices up when Democrats are in office to make more money so as to get Republicans elected. They do this because they're greedy and they know that it will hurt the Democrats. And then when the Republican gets elected, they dump their prices and make less in profit to help the Republican. To this, I say, why do they want to help the Republican if they make more money during the Democrat presidency? That doesn't make any sense. But Democrats don't make any sense either. So today, gasoline is about $3.50 a gallon nationally. That is roughly $1 higher than when Biden entered office. And according to Gas Buddy, it provides real-time gasoline prices, obviously. Gas at the pump is expected to go up to $4 a gallon later on this year. We mark that as a Joe Biden lie. Two more. Number 5, Joe Biden will say tonight, before God and all of the people of the United States of America, nay, the world, that he is doing everything in his... I'm going to get through it without laughing. Don't make me laugh, Bell. Don't make me laugh. I'm not going to laugh.
No laughing. Serious matter here.
I'm going to look right in the camera when I say this. Joe Biden is doing everything in his power to secure the southern border.
That is not a joke. That is a natural fact.
Let's go ahead and put that in the sloppy Joe lie detector, shall we? That's not true. Of course it's not true. It's the biggest whopper of all whoppers, possibly in my lifetime. And there's been a lot of political lies in my lifetime. Since Joe Biden has taken office, he has issued 90 executive orders. Almost 30 of them were on the day that he took office. I guess he's actually issued more executive orders than that. Many of these initial 90 were on border enforcement policies initiated by the President of the United States previous to Joe Biden. That would be Donald J. Trump. Joe Biden stopped wall construction. Joe Biden has done everything in his power to stymie our border patrol. He stopped the stay in Mexico policy, which was so bad and so devastating to our southern borders and those towns along the southern border that he had to reverse it. In 2021, there were 1.7 million border encounters, which is the highest ever until, you want to guess what beat it, Bell? So in 2021, we had 1.7 million border encounters. That does not include getaways, but that is not the record. You know what the record is?
I have no clue.
2022, the following year, when there were 2 million such border encounters, those don't include getaways.
Man, it's a good thing he secured the border. Otherwise, we'd have been screwed.
Yeah, we'd be in a tough spot if he had not secured the border. Joe Biden is most certainly not doing everything in his power to secure the southern border.
And lying dog-faced pony soldier.
Mr. President, anyone with a brain and eyeballs can see it, even if they don't admit it. The political left won't admit it, but they know it's true as well. Anytime you want a liberal to shut up about politics, bring up the southern border and ask them if it's a sustainable policy to allow anyone who wants to come into this country. Just ask them. Say, currently, over the last 2 years, there were 4 million, almost 4 million encounters, and many of those encounters involved individuals that have been trained to say that they're asylum seekers. And Biden takes them all because they want the votes. Come on, man.
Mr. Wise Guy over here.
I try, Mr. President. And then finally, on the economic front, Joe Biden is expected tonight to say that, comparatively speaking to the previous administration, that they have increased domestic oil and gasoline production. Increased. Gone up. Let's go ahead and put this final thought into the Matt Murphy Sloppy Joe lie detector and see what we got. Well, I mean, you're 6 for 6, Mr. President. Congratulations. You've accomplished something there. All lies. A 2022 Committee to Unleash Prosperity study by the University of Chicago found that oil production under Donald Trump's policies would have resulted in 2 to 3 million barrels a day more production if Joe Biden had simply done nothing. If he had done nothing. And I'm getting that through New York Post. So hat tip to New York Post on that factoid. America would have produced $2 billion worth more of oil last year alone if not for Joe Biden's war against climate change. Donald Trump issued permitting for drilling on 100 million acres of federal land. Biden eliminated virtually all of that. Joe Biden, as a matter of fact, has now issued fewer permits drilling on federal property than any president since World War II. Since World War II. And if we were drilling that much domestically, use your brain, the environmentalists wouldn't be applauding Joe Biden so much, and our gasoline would not cost us so much either.
We're in a painful transition, Matt.
We're going to hear that tonight, you think? You going to watch this? You going to play a drinking game with me tonight? Although I'm not drinking, so it's going to be tough.
No, I have no interest in seeing him.
It's going to be hard for me. I'll watch so you don't have to.
He does have one final comment, though.
What does he got?
I did what I came to do.
That's true. Boy, oh boy, is that not the truth. More and more. I have often gone back and forth. Does Joe know what he's doing? Is he just a blithering idiot? Is he so dementia-ridden that he has no ability to understand the consequences of his actions? Or does he fully understand the consequences of his actions? I often go back and forth, but the more I look at it, the more I think, well, even an absolute moron couldn't believe that this is working.
Where am I? What's going to happen to me?
Well, there's some of that, too, admittedly. 122 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. When we return, whether Bell K wants to or not, we're going to call Dan Mandis. We're going to find out where's Dan on the Matt Murphy Show on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. So everybody's watching me fix my hair on TV, Bell, because I thought that I was going to the Be Right Back screen, but apparently I wasn't doing that. I was anyway, I don't know what's going on over there. One way or the other, yeah, I was fixing my hair because everybody was telling me my hair was messed up. 127 Super Talk 99.7 WTN. In a moment, we'll break down the state address from Governor Bill Lee last evening. Excited to do that for you. Coming up at 2:30, Congressman John Rose will be on with us. It's like we've had a quorum of Tennessee Congress people on. I don't know if our own Dan Mandis had anyone on this morning. I don't know, maybe. But certainly he'll be seeing all of them tonight. He'll be seeing Desjardins and John Rose and Andy Ogles and Mark Green and the rest of them. And I thought maybe it's a good opportunity for us. You know, for those who weren't listening, I can't imagine you weren't. Everyone listens to Dan, right? Dan Mandis in Nashville's Morning News is heading off to Washington, D.C. So we thought we'd play a game of where in the world is Nashville's Morning News now? Dan Mandis joins us on the Murphy Show hotline. Hey, Dan.
Hey, Matt, how are you?
I'm great. See, unbeknownst to you, we had this great idea of following you around Washington, D.C. and checking it out and saying, well, what's Dan doing right now? So are you in D.C. already?
I am in between the Lincoln Memorial and by the Reflection Pond and the Washington Monument. So, yeah, this is amazing.
How long has it been since you've been to Washington, D.C.? I know you try to stay away from the swamp.
Oh, Lord, it's been like 20 years. I mean, it's been a long time. I used to live in Richmond, Virginia, so we'd come up here every once in a while, but I haven't actually gotten out and really just walked around Washington, D.C., so as I'm walking towards the nation's capital, it's cleaned up a lot. I don't know when the last time you were here, but last time I was here, man, this place like truly was a swamp, but they've cleaned it up quite a bit since the last time I was here. And of course, Matt, you'll love this. I get to Washington, D.C. First thing I do is it's like some sort of weird sonar. I see the baseball stadium, and I try to break in.
Have you ever watched a game at Washington National Park?
No. As I said, it's been so long since I've been here. So, no. And by the way, you'll love this. And I think I'm okay in saying this because it was out in public. So I don't think I'm exposing any super-duper secret state secrets. Bill Hagerty, Senator Hagerty, was on my plane coming to Washington, D.C. He was flying Southwest, Matt.
Wow. That man has...
So that is our tax dollars hard at work there. Apparently, the senator is, sort of sloughing it with the rest of us on Southwest.
So are you excited about the history that you will watch tonight? I know you're not excited about who's going to be giving the speech, but... bottom line, are you excited about getting into the chamber and doing something that so many Americans, Tennesseans, don't get a chance to do, and that is watch a State of the Union address?
I'm really looking forward to it. I'm not looking forward to hearing, of course, President Biden. But to be candid, I'm here for the history of it. I'm going to be able to see the chambers. I'm going to be able to see the Capitol building. I'm going to be going to a reception at some point beforehand, which means that you're right. I'll probably see Congressman Rose and Desjardins, and maybe I'll see Congressman Mark Green and some other folks as well. So, yeah, I mean, I'm really looking forward to it. And, as I said, it's going to be tough to sit and, listen to the president knowing that it's going to be – I've already seen indications as to what he's going to say. And it's just a bunch of crap. But you know what the thing is? That's fine because we'll be talking about it, tomorrow morning on Nashville's Morning News. I'm going to be broadcasting live from here. And people are already breaking down the speech. And it's, for me, and I said this morning, he either has to lie or be honest. Because if he's honest, of course, we all know things are not going well here in America. So the only thing he can do, the only option he has is to lie. And he does that. Well, he doesn't really do it well because everyone knows that he's lying. And so this is going to be one of those moments where you look at the president and you think, okay, well, what is he going to say tonight? Because there's really nothing that you can point to that is going well in this country. At least I can't.
Mr. Wise guy over here.
Can you?
Given for me, we know the lies, and we kind of just ran down some of the biggies about the budget deficit and inflation and gasoline prices and all of those things. For me, it's all a matter of tone, Dan, because I think the tone will tell us what Tony takes specifically toward the Republicans might give us a little bit of a hint as to whether or not he plans to run for re-election, because he has to be seeing these polling numbers that you talk about in the morning, that we talk about in the afternoon. He's got to be looking at this.
You say that, but what kind of narcissist would still run seeing those poll numbers? So I just can't believe that anyone in their right mind, and I say that sort of tongue-in-cheek, I don't see how anyone in their right mind can run for re-election seeing the polling numbers and knowing how bad those polling numbers are. So it's anybody's guess. You'll notice, though, that he hasn't officially announced, right? I mean, so the classified documents fiasco came out, and so he's been intimating that he's going to run. But they say he's going to hit the road after the after this speech tonight. They say that tonight's speech is going to be sort of a test run of his message on the campaign trail. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens.
Well, we'll all be watching. We will not be watching in person, but we will be watching. I'm watching basically for you. That's why I'm not for you as in Dan can't watch, so I'm going to. I'm watching in hopes that I will actually see you. And if you could exclaim something from the gallery, that might help give us an indication as to where you are. If Dan Mandis were to exclaim anything from the gallery of the House of Representatives, what do you think it would be? Would it be like a "you lie" like Joe Wilson? What do you think?
I thought about that, and I asked folks, what they thought that I should exclaim, from the nether reaches of the Capitol building and the chamber. Most people said that I wouldn't be able to contain myself. I would probably scream, "You lie." I'm going to try not to, but I've been up since about 12:45, 1 o'clock this morning. So I'm thinking by about 9:30, 10 o'clock, as Joe just sort of prattles on with his speech, I might actually be nodding off and perhaps even snoring. And by the way, I was told on good authority, insurrection jokes frowned upon once you get into the Capitol.
Yes. And I know at least when I had a great opportunity to go and see a State of the Union back in 2016, they tell you they frown upon any sort of, I forgot and left my gun in my pocket. Probably don't want to do that either.
No,
I don't want to do any of that.
I'll be doing that.
And
although walking around D.C., I probably need one.
No doubt. Count the number of metal detectors that you have to go through. I went through 4 before we got to our seat in 2016. So I'm curious if it's going to be more or less in the current state of affairs. And by the way, our super texters are asking me to ask you, have you seen the big fence that they're putting up around the Capitol building yet?
No, I have not. I'm still walking toward the Washington Monument. The Capitol building is way beyond that. So, no, I won't be at the Capitol building till about 6 o'clock tonight, and I have not seen the fence. I will not bring fence cutters, although that is tempting.
All right, my nomination for an exclamation tonight is, fiddle farts! Give him a good fiddle farts, okay? And by the way, my boss is currently calling me and telling me that I'm like 4 minutes late for a break, so I've got to go, Dan.
All right, man. Talk to you later.
See you later. There's Dan Mandis of Nashville's Morning News. He's in Washington, D.C., where in D.C. is Nashville's Morning News now. Back in a moment.
Corn Pop was a bad dude.
Hit us up on the Super Text line on the Matt Murphy Show, 139, almost 140, Super Talk 99.7 WTN. We still have yet to get to the State of the State address by Governor Bill Lee, a more forthright address than you will hear tonight in Washington, D.C., I assure you of that. Your suggestions on the Super Text line coming in on what exactly Dan Mandis should yell from the gallery. Now, understand something. When you get in there, the somberness, well, I won't even say somberness. What's the right word? I mean, the historical nature of the occasion dictates your manner. And even if it's somebody as sleazy and good for nothing as Joe Biden, I don't have any belief that Dan would yell any of these things, but some of the suggestions are pretty funny. For example, someone suggested that Mandis yell nothing at all, but merely stand up and rip a piece of paper at an appropriate time during the speech, suggesting or as a callback to what Nancy Pelosi did a couple of years ago with Donald Trump. Hey, I'm proud of myself. I transitioned back to the show on TV. Y'all proud of me? Yeah. I'm proud of myself. Did that all on my own.
We'll get you trained.
I know. But normally I just see the one screen, and now we're on the edit. It's different. Every day's different. Every day's a holiday, and every day's an adventure, and I love that. A lot of you offering suggestions on the Super Text line. What if all Republicans yell, "You lie" at the same time? Somebody should stand up during the speech and just rip some paper. Mentioned that. Dan should fiddlesticks or fiddle farts or fiddlesticks, I thought was pretty good. That was my suggestion. Corey the Yard Boy said Dan should stand up, and I'm going to do my best to Dan Mandis impersonation here. You ready? All right, don't make me laugh. He should stand up in the middle of the speech and say, "Whatever, moving on." Yeah, that was a little more Levin than Mandis, but I did my best. You know, you could don't pop a large balloon. That might, Secret Service might not like that. That might be a bad idea. You could just stand up and say, "Was Corn Pop a bad dude?" Yeah. By the way, if Dan's listening to the show,
was a bad dude.
Okay, well then you'd get the answer. Corn Pop was a bad dude. If Dan's listening, by the way, it's hard to hear the speech in the chamber because they don't amplify it in the chamber. Just a little insider, if you're ever able to go, if you ever have the chance, and every sitting member of Congress gets one ticket. And so what happens typically...
One or one additional?
No, they get one. They get a seat. They get a seat in the floor, but they get a ticket
for the gallery.
In the gallery.
Gotcha.
For an invited guest. And, obviously a lot of the members, they will allow their wife to go, or they'll invite a constituent to go, and then occasionally they'll invite one of us to go. I was invited at the pleasure of Congressman Mo Brooks after a number of years of inviting others. And it was Barack Obama's last year, 2016. And forget who the president is, man. It's history. It's our country. And I think Michael said as much, and he and I were talking during our transition. You stand there and you think of Ronald Wilson Reagan delivering a speech. You think of Dwight D. Eisenhower speaking before the assembled Congress of the United States of America. You think of the many great presidents that have stood there, history making. Obviously, all of them in one way or another. The room is smaller than you think it is. It's smaller than it appears on television. Although, it's obviously large enough to hold about 500 or so. It's got to be more than that. No, it's 535 plus the Supreme Court justices that attend, plus the Joint Chiefs of Staff. So you're probably looking at about 600 people on the floor when you count all of the president's people, his cabinet members and whatnot. So you got 435 House of Representatives representative members. You have 100 senators, and then you'll subtract one or two because you always have some who can't be there for whatever reason and some who aren't there for specific reasons. Like there's always a holdout from the member of the cabinet. God forbid anything should happen during the speech. So you get there, and as I related to you yesterday, for those listening, you don't go anywhere for a long time. And once they lock down the building, meaning once the House of Representatives begin assembling, you'll get there if you're a member of the gallery, and you'll watch as the bomb squad comes through and sweeps the room. I mean, everything in the bottom of the room is empty. And then eventually House of Representatives members start filtering in, and the Senate, they start filtering in. There's extra chairs in the front of the room. You know things are getting hot and heavy when, your cabinet members start showing up, when the Supreme Court members start showing up. Several of them always lay back. When Ruth Bader Ginsburg was there in 2016, she fell asleep during Barack Obama's speech. I watched it with my own eyes. But one of the things that I was fascinated by are the celebrities. We had, I mentioned we had Michael Keaton. I had Michael Keaton sitting like 4 seats down from me. But you can't, it's not like you can take a selfie because nobody lets you bring your cell phone in. Cell phones are most certainly not allowed in the gallery area. But I say all that to say what you hear on your television at home is through miking. And so they're mic'd up and you get that nice crystal sound or that great sound. They don't have that in the auditorium. You're just listening to natural amplification in the House of Representatives chamber. At least we were in 2016 because they don't want to feedback. So it's difficult to hear, honestly, inside of the chamber. It's hard to understand, and you get a prepared copy of the speech prior to sitting down so you can kind of follow along with whatever president, and depending on the president, whatever lies the president might be telling. And with the guy that I was listening to, there were a hell of a lot of lies about his quote-unquote accomplishments as president of the United States of America. This was obviously Barack Obama in early 2016. All right, so there's that. We had a State of the State address last night, and Bill Lee, he hit on all the high notes as we expected. We're going to go over some of those coming up in just a moment. So Eric's in Jasper. I don't know if this is up or not. I can't see Bell because he's off making his food. Eric, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Are you going to pick on me for messing with my hair?
I am going to set Randy straight. He thinks your hair's bad now. He should have seen you during COVID at the last station you were at with the bed head. I swear to God, I woke up, I looked at that picture and went, look, are they bringing back the Geico caveman again?
Yeah, if you're watching on Super Talk TV and you think it's bad now, it was really bad in 2021 during the COVID times.
Oh, my Lord. Yeah, I'm your favorite antagonist from down there, Jasper. And I really, sometimes I really miss you, but I turn on Thursdays and listen to you with the other guys. But anyways, Eric, if Randy thinks it's bad, yes, sir.
Yeah, no. I was just going to thank you for the call and thank you for the reminder that as bad as it might be on Super Talk TV, it could be a lot worse and has been from time to time. I like to let it grow. I mean, I started growing my hair. I always kept it real nice and cropped short until COVID hit, and I let it grow and I let it go, and then we've never really come all the way back, much to my wife's chagrin. A lot of suggestions as to what Dan Manda should yell. What if Republicans boycott? There's really no reason to boycott. 3267 says there's an extreme standstill on 65 northbound starting at Concord Road. I don't know where that is, but find another way. That is a loyal field producer of the Matt Murphy Show offering some traffic advice on Super Talk 99.7.
That standstill goes up to Church Street where it starts to break up.
Well, that's no fun. That sounds awful. Ugh. Maybe get Maury on top of that.
Police activity.
Hey, look, when you get, hold on. Oh, well, there you go. And look, we should probably, if all three of us, look at how good you look. Oh, he left. Oh, look, did you see him in there with his cat shirt on? You can't talk because he didn't turn your microphone on before he went away. Isn't that nice? Well, if you're watching on Super Talk TV, you'll see Max back there. He's ready to go. Bell left because I put him on TV. All right, Bell, you got to come back. We got to go to break, buddy. When we return, we'll break down some of the State of the State address. Specifically, we'll talk about the four big proposals of Governor Bill Lee, one of them involving transportation, which was anticipated. We had a great conversation with Commissioner Butch Ely yesterday on our show. Well, the governor doubled down on some of that conversation. Specifically, he had a few things to say about how we were going to fund said transportation proposals. While I have a minute, because Bell left me, Governor Lee last night discussing investment in infrastructure and transportation.
In recent months, we have taken a closer look at transportation needs in this state, and I appreciate those of you who have engaged in the conversation thus far. It is time to invest in a transportation strategy for one of the fastest growing states in the country. We cannot solve this problem with debt or higher taxes, but we have to do something. Right now, there is a $26 billion backlog of projects across the state. Simply put, we are way behind. And we have to change the way we fund and build our roads and our bridges. We know that we have to tackle big urban projects, but if we don't change our strategy, we also know who will end up paying the price, our rural communities. And that's why I'm introducing the Transportation Modernization Act, a plan to engage public-private partnerships, to build additional choice lanes on urban highways, to ensure electric vehicle owners pay their share in maintaining our roads, and to provide a delivery model that builds rural and urban projects faster, all without the burden falling on Tennessee taxpayers.
All right, so there's Governor Bill Lee discussing last night the basic setup for his proposal that includes choice lanes, but is not just choice lanes. It is going to add an additional tax burden on electric vehicle owners who do not pay at the pump, as most of us do. And it will also focus on not just urban centers like Nashville, Knoxville, Chattanooga, Memphis, but also in more rural communities where some of these choice lanes will not get paid for by the private partnerships put together by the state of Tennessee. So some were asking yesterday, and I think I have a clear vision of this. Well, because I asked I asked Commissioner Ely this question yesterday. Well, how does this get paid for? Is it that the private company fronts the amount of money that it will take to construct the roads, and then they are recouped that amount of money in the tolls that they collect in the choice lanes, in addition to money that would help them maintain the roads? And Ely said, yes, that's the way that it works. Well, if that's the way that it works, why do we need to fund any of this through our transportation funds? And the answer is we're not. Not on the choice lane front, as I understand it. The money that's going into transportation is going to rural areas that also need improvement in roads, in bridges, and in other areas as they continue to grow some of these rural communities outside of the cities of Nashville or Chattanooga or Memphis or Knoxville or even Bristol, the Bristol-Johnson City area. So that was a major component of Governor Lee's speech last night. We'll get to the other three, which would allocate some additional monies. And I have a breakdown of some of the monies going into the transportation fund, plus what Governor Lee had to say about foster care. 153, Super Talk 99.7, WTN. Hey, folks, it's Matt Murphy. Let's talk for a moment about LT360. I've told you about the date that I want you to circle on your calendar. That is February the 22nd. It is our next opportunity to visit with Coach Scott, Coach Elizabeth, and the rest of the crew. We'll have the doc there as well. You can find out more at LT360.com. It's as simple as this. As I talk to you, I head to my handy-dandy laptop computer, and I type in LT360.com, and there pops up the website, and it says Dinner and Discussion with Nashville's 99.7's WTN's Matt Murphy, Coach Scott, and Dr. Underwood. You can sign up right there at the front page of the screen, and I want you to do exactly that because it's such an informative seminar. Even if you choose not to sign up, it will give you a roadmap even in that hour of discussion for success. But more importantly, sign up for this because it's going to help you not just with weight loss, although that's a major component, but also getting you off the pharmaceuticals, living a healthier life, getting healthy on a cellular level. That is what it's all about at LT360. So I encourage you to be with us. All you have to do is sign up. No cost to you. You'll get dinner. You'll get a great discussion. I'll be there. Coach Scott will be there, and we want to see you. LT360.com, LT360.com.
It is 2 o'clock. I'm Mac Maury with your top stories. Right now, 69 degrees, pretty sunny right now in Music City. You've heard Bell and Matt Murphy talking about some of that traffic there near Church Lane and Concord. It is all still there. Very big backup there. Going over to the State of the Union address tonight, 4th District Congressman Scott DesJarlais tells WTN's Michael Del Giorno show he expects President Biden's State of the Union address to be, quote, completely unbelievable.
Everyone listening is going to hear him say how good things are, and then they're going to go to the grocery store tomorrow or just went yesterday. And
once you factor in inflation, real wages are down 3.1% from a year ago because families are paying about $317 more every month on the same goods and services as they did a year ago. And that inflation isn't just because of goods like your groceries, but services. In Tennessee, Channel 4 says that one person is dead, another hurt after a crash early this morning on I-65 near Rosa Parks Boulevard. A 29-year-old woman slammed into a truck that was parked on the side of the interstate. That woman died. The truck driver was seriously injured by the truck rolling over that driver. The interstate was closed for several hours for the crash investigation, but reopened just after 6 a.m. The crash happened around 1:30. Toxicology testing is going to determine if alcohol was a factor in this crash. And 4 people went to hospitals after a fire was reported on a United Airlines flight shortly after the takeoff from San Diego heading to Newark. The plane returning to San Diego this morning. Here's Alex Stone.
Anne-Marie Buckland was on board the United flight as smoke filled the cabin of the Boeing 737. She said they didn't know immediately where it was coming from. As it unfolded, she and the stranger sitting next to her held hands to comfort one another.
And then all of a sudden we were just really in each other's arms, and it's great. It was great to be by her.
This longtime off-duty police officer was also on board.
The guy next to me, 2 seats over, started to scream. The guy in first class said, "Oh, God."
It was an external battery that was on fire, was put into a thermal containment bag, and the plane landed safely.
And that is the latest news. Weather's next. I'm Mac Maury, WTN News.
Well, hello. How are you? It's 2:05 and good afternoon. Welcome back. Last hour of the Matt Murphy Show on this Tuesday edition. Happy to be with you and thank you for being with us whatever time you're able to give us. We're certainly appreciative, whether it be on radio, on the app, or on any of our streaming platforms. And, of course, the brand new WTN TV found at YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Twitch. Thank you, Paul Winkler, for providing yet another avenue, or 4 separate avenues for those of you who desire to consume in a both audio and visual way. You may do so on any of those platforms, and we appreciate you doing so. 615-737-9986 is our telephone number. We'll get to your super text and your calls if you desire to call in. You may do so. That's it's almost become an old school way of communicating that very few individuals utilize outside of guests and whatnot. But I still like it, and I invite you to do it. You may also communicate via super text or any of the various chat platforms aforementioned. You can do it that way as well. So real quick, I want to run through the postmortem of the State of the State last night, which will, amongst Tennesseans, not be nearly as controversial as what we expect to happen in Washington, D.C. later on this evening. Governor Bill Lee offered his State of the State address, and he had some significant announcements, most of which we had previewed for you on Supertalk 99.7 WTN in advance of his speech, his address, at about 6 o'clock yesterday evening, before the gathered assembly of political figures, media, Tennesseans, etc. Governor Bill Lee has made transportation a priority of his in this session and moving forward. We played a clip of his announcement of a $3 billion transportation modernization fund, which includes $450 million for new state parks, or that's in addition to another $450 million for new state parks, as well as environmental cleanup. So $3 billion in transportation money, which would presumably not go toward choice lanes. If choice lanes become a reality, private companies would build those lane expansions in Tennessee, and then they would be able to charge a fee for individuals to utilize them. The governor did not make mention, as noted by the Tennessean, of the issues between Nashville and the state, the General Assembly more specifically, although those pieces of legislation are moving forward. There is legislation moving forward to protect mamas and daddies from, unbeknownst to them, walking themselves into a sexually charged drag show. Matter of fact, I think our guest tomorrow, Robbie Starbuck, we have Robbie on tomorrow at 12:35, if I'm not mistaken. And Robbie will be testifying later on this afternoon or tomorrow in regard to the drag show bill. His wife, Landon, will be speaking regarding eliminating underage gender mutilation in the state of Tennessee. I think that's right.
They never gave that bill an official name, did they?
What, the drag show bill?
Yeah.
Well, we talked to Jack Johnson about it, and he gave us a name, and I can't remember what he said, but it's misnamed as a drag show bill because it would not make drag shows illegal. It would make any instance in a public or private setting in which adult individuals perform acts of a sexual nature in front of kids.
Yeah, that's all. He said that the words drag show don't even appear in the bill.
They don't even appear in the bill.
Yeah.
So I had a lot less heartburn on it when it was described by Jack Johnson to me, because I have a problem when government tells youngsters, or rather when government tells parents of youngsters what they can and cannot do with their kids. I think that's a parental responsibility. But this would distinguish sexually explicit shows with shows of a different nature. The governor also brought up the idea of DCS, and I want to play you that clip. I might be reversing these. I can't remember what order I asked you for them in, Bell, but the Department of Children's Services. The issue of foster care has come to the forefront, and it's one of those that I think the state of Tennessee ought to be able to quickly and easily fix. We have far too many youngsters who exist in foster care in a way that some would call deplorable. And it's not right. And the governor talked last night about strong, healthy families and how to benefit the youngsters that find themselves in the foster care system. So with that in mind, here's Governor Bill Lee from last night. Now, is this the 3-minute clip? All right, we'll let this play. I might ask you to stop it at one point, but here's Governor Bill Lee on addressing the issue of foster care in DCS.
In Tennessee, we also value the dignity of a foster child who longs for a loving home, the dignity of a mother who simply can't raise a child alone, or a couple whose prayers for a child have not yet been answered. Last fall, we began working anew with our partners in the General Assembly to address the growing challenges in serving at-risk children in Tennessee, and quite frankly, across the country. The needs of Tennessee children have evolved, and our approach to serving them must evolve too. We built a team at our Department of Children's Services that's ready to move forward and provide better services. Our new commissioner, Margie Quinn, brings decades of expertise working with the most vulnerable populations in our state, in her service with the TBI and with anti-human trafficking nonprofits. With Commissioner Quinn at the helm, we've already hired dozens of new qualified caseworkers. And DCS caseworkers have an incredibly difficult job, and they deserve our support. Last year, we provided 2 pay raises for caseworkers, and I intend to boost their pay again in this budget. And we are also proposing more than $190 million in additional resources to support the mission of DCS and provide for the safety and well-being of Tennessee children.
Just for expediency and time, pull him down there, and I'll go ahead and tell you, $33 million to increase bed capacity for the Department of Children's Services, $39.8 million to increase the rate of payment for providers in the DCS provider network. That would offer residential and clinical services. $7.3 million for foster families to incentivize foster care and adoption of siblings. $15.9 million to align DCS case manager salaries with market salary regionally and in the private sector. $11.4 million for short-term private case managers. $5 million for juvenile justice, youth intervention, and $31 million to replace the Tennessee Family and Child Tracking System, the DCS case management and payment system. So those are 7 different ways, and the amounts of money going into the 7 different ways to attempt to benefit kids in foster care. I understand that it's not the sexiest of topics, but it touches my heart because if it were not, my mother, many of you know, my mother had a malignant brain tumor when I was 5 years old. It was diagnosed when I was 5 years old. It was removed, and she eventually went on to live many years beyond that. A lot of those years were in a nursing facility or an assisted living facility, but the surgery itself gave her extended life, but she was unable to care for my brother, my sister, and myself. I have an older brother and an older sister. Were it not for my grandparents, we would have been wards of the state. My dad was out of the picture. He left when he found, it sounds like a horrible script for a movie, but when my father discovered that my mother had brain cancer and she had to have a malignant brain tumor removed, it was, quote, too much for him, and he left. He just up and left. I've reconciled that. I reconciled that years and years ago with my dad, and so it's not, prior to his passing, we came back together and made amends over all of that. That said, I don't know, but for my grandparents, what would have happened to my brother, my sister, and myself. Like I said, I was 5. And so it is close to my heart, this idea that there are many kids that, for whatever reasons having nothing to do with themselves, they are immersed in the foster care system, and sadly, for many of them, it is a life sentence of being underwater and unable to catch their breath. And as they start from behind, they can't catch up in emotional development, in actual physical development sometimes because of malnutrition, in a stable environment that would provide them with educational development. And we need to do as best we can for these young people. It is easy for us to say, well, they need to get them out of the house. I mean, if you're not taking care of your kids, you need to get them out. Well, where do they go? Becoming wards of the state is not an answer. And our good friend, whom you'll hear from tomorrow, Cameron Smith, put his money where his mouth is with regard to foster care and adopted a 16-year-old who had been in the system for years, a system that, frankly, I don't want to speak for Cameron or his family, but a system that seems to have in so many ways failed this young man. Just failed him. We ought to do better. We ought to do better. I mean, if you really care, especially about the inner city kids that we talk about so often and breaking the cycle of violence, if you want to break up Memphis and stop that chain of events, obviously it takes more caring and loving parents. Obviously it takes father figures and authority figures in their lives at an early age. But when they are absent, it takes us. Either us directly or us through the state to come in and attempt to provide, to do right by those kids. It is a basic function of government to take care of our young. It is a basic function of the family and of the church and of the community and of charitable organizations. But yes, the state has to enter into a partnership with those organizations. I'm a libertarian with a small L. I don't believe in defaulting to government when other sources are available. And so government work in concert with church organizations, charitable organizations, community groups, that's where it has to start. And I applaud the governor for trying to do something about a circumstance that is easy for many of us to forget or not think about, because we don't live in communities where you see a lot of fatherless or motherless children. Many of us don't. Some of us do. And I did not recognize it at the time because I did have my grandfather and my grandmother there to protect me and to raise me. And every day of my life, I remind myself how blessed I was to have those individuals. In addition to others that stepped up to the plate, these are teachers and family members of some of my closest friends who filled the gaps that my grandparents couldn't. If it were not for the parents of one of my closest friends in the 8th, 9th, and 10th grade, I don't know that I would have gone to college. Because my grandfather didn't see that as a focus of necessity. My granddad dropped out of school in the 8th grade. He was the smartest man I ever met. But all of that to say that in the absence of parental figures there for these children, the rest of us have to pick up the slack. If we desire truly to get out of some of these negative inner city situations, especially inner city situations that we see happening right in front of us. All right, it's 2:20 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. That's Governor Bill Lee. That's all we'll do there because I have to get to a few other things before we say hello to Congressman John Rose, who'll circle us back to Washington, D.C. All right, 2:20 Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Back in a moment. Hey, friends, Accurate Mortgage wants to let you know that interest rates have creeped down a little bit. Now, I understand that there was a little quarter-point increase recently, and they do as well at Accurate Mortgage Group, better than me, because they understand mortgages. They should be the first call that you make if it's time to change where you're living and get another house, if it's time to sell where you're at and move it, maybe upsize or downsize, maybe you got a family member coming in or going out, whatever the circumstance, I encourage you to go to Accurate Mortgage Group. It's to the rescue with their payment reduction program. Let's talk about that for a moment. That payment reduction program helps buyers enjoy a lower mortgage payment for the first 2 years. It's still a normal fixed rate, but you pay less for the first 2 years of the loan. And this is going to be an incentive for buyers and sellers to sell that property and to buy that property respectively. Great program. Ask more about it when you call Mike, Joe, Heino, or the rest of the crew at Accurate Mortgage Group. If you want to customize your own home, Accurate Mortgage Group has a single closed construction loan that they want to talk to you about. And, of course, as always, you can pay off higher interest credit card debt and roll that debt into a brand new refinance and save money in that regard as well. There's a lot of ways to crack that nut, and they want to talk with you about it at Accurate Mortgage Group. They're the best in the business. You can meet with them in Cool Springs or do everything over the phone. An equal housing lender, they're a division of Acopia LLC, NMLS 4664. Contact Accurate Mortgage Group. Start here. AccurateMTG.com. That's AccurateMTG.com.
We take a look at tonight for the State of the Union address, and then we take a look at last night for Governor Lee and the state of state. All that and more coming up for 2:30, Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
2:24, also coming up, Congressman John Rose, just after Mac Morey's news at the bottom of the hour. Give me a little Mac Morey. I need a little Mac Morey in my life, Bell. I'm trying to get you accustomed to some of this. Wait, what? No, not Dan Mandis in the news booth. Wait, this is not the Dan Mandis show.
It's all M's.
Uh-huh. I'm just trying to get you used to it. If you're not going to be on camera, we're working on Bell. He'll eventually.
Oh, he'll get there.
He'll acquiesce. I mean, I have no doubt. You're looking good there, Moore. I'm not supposed to have that in front of my face. That's what they tell me.
There you go.
You getting a little nervous, Maury? Well, it's Tuesday, right? It's the Tuesday before the Sunday that we'll see the Philadelphia Eagles defeat the Kansas City Chiefs onto their
First it was the Bills, now it's the Bengals, then now it's the Eagles.
I'm rooting for the Chiefs. I told you I'm rooting for the Chiefs.
I appreciate that.
You're my homie.
My homie.
You're my homie.
No, I'm excited. I am nervous, but I'm excited. It's a great team we're playing. Great team.
No doubt.
I mean, just all facets. They don't have a weakness.
Is this Las Vegas? Where is this?
This will be in Glendale, Arizona.
Why do we do that to ourselves?
I don't know.
So they're playing in the Cardinals Stadium?
Yeah.
Yeah. Would you ever consider going to a Super Bowl, McMurray?
Heck yeah. If the prices weren't super outrageous, I would totally go. It's bucket list.
What are we talking about?
Pricing? Nosebleeds of nosebleeds, you're talking $6,000. Yeah. If you want a decent seat, you're talking 11. Yeah. That's for one ticket.
For a game that most of the time turns out to be a blowout. It's not even...
It's true. More often than not.
Well, it's true. Well, it's because corporations have taken over buying those tickets on the secondhand market, and they have all the money in the world, and so they box out actual fans who want to try to go. I mean, could you imagine spending $12,000 for nosebleeds? I mean, because you'd want to go with somebody, right?
Of course, you want to go with someone. That's just the tickets. And then you food, then you got to stay somewhere, then you got to get there and for a flight, parking. I mean, you're talking 15, 16, 17 grand.
It's the reason, despite the fact that my beloved Georgia Bulldogs have been in the college football playoffs the last 2 years, I've not pulled the trigger on semifinal or final tickets because even that with someone else, if you and I decide to go to a semifinal football game, we're probably tossing out all told $4,000 or $5,000.
Wow.
It's just insane. I mean, but people do it.
This is my football ignorance, but if you have season tickets,
Bell, we ask that only people on camera speak, please.
If you have season tickets to the Cardinals, that doesn't give you a ticket to the Super Bowl, right?
No.
Okay.
You get there's season ticket benefits, but no, you're not just going to get a ticket. Nope. No.
And if you're a season ticket holder for like the Chiefs, that doesn't automatically give you a shot at a.
No. Well, you get.
There's packages and things like that. Right, you're still spending thousands of dollars.
I mean, you have a family member that's a ticket holder, don't you? Or do you buy them on the secondary?
We buy them.
You buy them on the secondary market. So if you are a season ticket holder for the Chiefs, for example, you get an opportunity you get first dibs.
First dibs, exactly.
For the playoffs.
Yes.
For every playoff game.
Every game.
I mean, so it's a big deal. I mean, that's why the seeding is a big deal. One, obviously a home game is easier to win. But two, your fans get rewarded with a home game.
Yeah, season tickets, great. I get to go to this game. This is what I've been waiting for all year.
What do playoff tickets cost versus the Super Bowl?
I don't know. Matt, you went to a playoff, didn't you?
Went to a playoff game.
What do you think? What were they? Face value.
They were expensive, but since they played the Jacksonville Jaguars, that helped their case because that's a smaller franchise, not as many fans, newer. I mean, we had great seats, man, and they were...
Was it $250 each or
like
something
$300, $400?
That's not bad.
That's not for I'm talking. We were 10 rows back, and we were 10 rows back in the end zone. Like we were great seats. I was looking at Travis Kelce's face, like for $300. You're talking that seat's $25,000.
I've got a super texter, Brian, that writes in and says, I went to the 2002 Super Bowl in New Orleans.
Nice.
Pats versus Rams.
Nice.
Awesome experience. Cost $12,000. And he said, and I was touching the ceiling of the Superdome.
Was that solo?
Oh gosh.
No, I think that's probably two people.
Wow.
Back then, but that's 21 years ago.
That would make sense.
And this previous subject, and all right, so McMurray's not nervous yet. We're going to check in with you every day.
Yep.
To see your nervousness level. And I have a segment that I'm somehow trying to. I think I'm maybe square pegging this thing into a round hole. But I have 10 signs or 10 ways to identify a witch that I'm trying to work into our conversation regarding the Philadelphia Eagles and the Kansas City Chiefs. I can't figure out how to do that quite yet, but I found this on Mental Floss, which is one of my favorite websites.
Oh, nice.
It's 10 ways to identify a witch.
Well, one is if she floats.
Well, they don't put that one in there because these are actual ways used to identify witches during the Salem witch trials.
This was one of them.
I think that was a Monty Python thing. I don't think they actually
they really did that.
Well, but you know what they did? You know what they did do though? They did things like, well, if you could recite the Lord's Prayer, you weren't a witch. But they were about to burn someone at the stake. And this actually happened, who began reciting the Lord's Prayer. And everyone around said, well, wait a minute, maybe the jury got it wrong because witches can't physically recite the Lord's Prayer. And then a guy named Cotton Mather came in and said, no, this is the devil talking through him. And so they burned him anyway.
I foresee a similar conclusion to Bell if he refuses to get on camera. That's where
Well, if Bell turns out to be a witch, I think we can find out on number 3. And I'm empowering
What's number 3?
Number 3 is to check for moles, birthmarks, scars, or extra nipples.
That's on you.
You know what? I had a really obvious birthmark, but it's been covered up by tattoos now, so you can't really see it.
This is my I might as well do this. This is my favorite. Ways to identify a witch. Weigh them against a stack of Bibles.
They have to weigh more or less.
Said if the suspected witch is heavier or lighter than a stack of Bibles, depending on the individual doing the weighing, then clearly she is guilty of evil doing. If the scales balance out, she's in the clear. As you can imagine, it was a rare occurrence that the scales balanced out.
Wow. No wonder a lot of those poor women died.
That's funny.
We lost our ever-loving minds for about 3 years before the United States of America was officially created back in the 1600s. Anyway, I've got more ways to demonstrate if someone's a witch or not. I'm trying to figure out a way to fit that into some sort of superstition of McMorray's with the Kansas City Chiefs playing Super Bowl. I'll figure it out.
I believe in you.
2:32. It's time for news on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
32 minutes after the hour, 2 o'clock. I'm Mac Morey with your top stories. Right now, 69 degrees and another nice day in Music City. It may be a little bit rainier tomorrow. We'll keep you updated with that right here at Super Talk. Weather and traffic coming up just a few minutes. In the nation's capital, the White House says President Biden will use tonight's State of the Union address to highlight what they say are several, quote, positives to try to ease Americans' concerns. High inflation is moderating, gas prices have fallen from highs last year, and job growth continues to be strong. Tennessee 5th District Congressman Andy Ogles tells WTN's Michael Del Giorno show.
This administration, by just standard procedure, wakes up in the morning and tells fairy tales, and they repeat it and repeat it and repeat it.
And once you factor in inflation, real wages are down 3.1% from a year ago because families are paying about $317 more every month on the same goods and services as they did a year ago. And as for the state of the state last night, Governor Lee's $55 billion proposed budget prioritizes easing traffic congestion due to the popular growth, but he's trying to make one thing clear.
Hear me when I say this, toll roads are not on the table.
But it will mean new roads, and Lee says it'll be a statewide investment.
To alleviate urban congestion in our major cities and widen rural interstates across the state, we are proposing an additional $3 billion to build roads in all 3 Grand Divisions of Tennessee.
And another one of Lee's priorities is cutting taxes, which includes a one-time 3-month tax holiday on food starting in August. Crime in Tennessee. News 2 says that police in Williamson County are trying to find a man who has stolen multiple lamps and other items from a store in Berry Farms. He's accused of stealing from that store 3 separate times, reportedly taking over $800 in merchandise. There's a cash reward if anyone has any information on his whereabouts. Call police. That's the latest news. Weather's next. I'm Mac Morey, WTN News.
Hey, friends, it's Matt Murphy. Nashville Painting Company has announced their most aggressive pricing on interior work of the season. Now, Nashville Painting Company always tries to give you the best possible price, but they're really focusing in on interior work. This is the time of year that you're inside mostly, and maybe you've noticed some paint chipping, some fading. Perhaps you're just tired of the colors that you're seeing. If that's the case, I encourage you to call Nashville Painting Company today. They're the finest in the industry in terms of interior work, exterior work, deck staining. They do it all at Nashville Painting Company, and I can testify they are as good as promised. I have had them paint my house, not in Nashville, but in Birmingham. Years ago, Jeremy Reeves was working in Birmingham. I met him then, and I know how good of a job he does from past experience, and I've seen the work that he does today. You can see it, too, at NashvillePaintingCompany.com. That's NashvillePaintingCompany.com. Or better yet, call for a free appointment. He will come out. He'll give you exact scopes and pricing. There are no surprises, and he'll get to work making your house better and more valuable through Nashville Painting Company. 615-635-0350. 635-0350. Call today. Tell them Matt Murphy sent you to Nashville Painting Company. Super Talk 99.7 WTN, Matt Murphy and you. I want to circle back briefly before we go to our guest on the Murphy Show hotline. I would like to circle back to the conversation that we were having about the Department of Children's Services. One of our super texters writes in, Matt, I was on hold for the DCS conversation. I was a foster parent for over 12 years here in Tennessee. Have adopted 3 boys out of foster care. The only thing I can say is DCS in Tennessee has failed as a home in the foster care system in all of my years. I believe it is more politics and DCF trying to take away my parental rights. It may be the case. I don't know. So we're I am going to invest my time and my energy in watching as many officials try to do best they can by the children of Tennessee that have been failed, sadly, by the system and by their parents. All right, back to Washington, D.C. we go. Thanks so much to Congressman John Rose in his willingness to spend a little time with Middle Tennessee, telling us what he anticipates in advance of the State of the Union address tonight. Congressman Rose, good afternoon. I hope you're well, sir.
Yes, Matt. Thanks for having me on the show today.
Well, I know it's a busy day in D.C. A lot of folks up there, a lot of folks anticipating the address. I mean, is this a lot of – I mean, we know what's coming, right? It's a lot of political spin with Joe Biden claiming to take credit for the good that he doesn't really deserve credit for and just choosing to ignore a lot of the bad that he has created over the 2 years that he's been in office. Is this what you anticipate?
It is. I think more of the same. The president saying one set of things, but the American people are going to know the facts are quite different. So I think he's going to tell us that the economy is grand and all is going well. And what we all know, every working American knows, anyone who has to work to make ends meet, we know that prices for everything are up and that we've lost at least 1 month of income in the last 2 years because of this president's bad policies.
Congressman John Rose with us discussing the possibilities of tonight's address. We're told that the president has not altered the address in any substantial way to deal with the recent events involving the communist Chinese and their surveillance balloon. What do you say about this issue? I mean, most individuals that I talk to, Congressman, who are in the know, who have the intelligence briefings that you guys in the halls of Congress have, indicate to me that this could have been handled even before it got over land in Alaska, much less Montana. Yet the Biden administration allowed this thing to traverse the entire continental United States of America. What say you?
Well, I think this balloon incident is symbolic, if you will, emblematic of the way this president has dealt with every foreign policy challenge that he's faced. So he's a day late and a dollar short. With respect to his response here, we saw this with how he dealt with the botched withdrawal or retreat from Afghanistan. We saw it in how he dealt with the threat that Russia faced or presented to the Ukraine. We've seen it in how he's dealt with China, how he's dealt with Iran, how he's dealt with North Korea, and really every other international challenge that the president has faced. And, you know, the old adage, a stitch in time saves 9, comes to mind. If this president, had taken action quickly, then we wouldn't have potentially seen, our national security compromised. It does little good to shoot down the balloon after it's traveled all the way across the country and collected all the information the Chinese might have desired to collect. And so, this president continues to be late to the game when it comes to responding to the challenges that this country is faced with and that his administration is faced with. And I think that's what happens when you get a person who's really past their prime. And maybe this president, if you look back at his long history with respect to foreign policy, he's gotten it wrong nearly every time throughout his career. And this is just one more example of that.
Congressman, I believe that you can tell a lot about the president's tone tonight. I expect him to spin everything politically in his direction and the direction of the Democrats. He'll conveniently forget that the inflation rate was 1.4% when he took office, and we haven't seen 1.4% since he took office. He'll forget about where gasoline prices were. He'll forget about the bounce back that was already occurring in the aftermath of COVID in the latter months of the Trump administration. All those things I expect. But the question is still out there as to whether Joe Biden has a plan to run in 2024. And I think based on the tone that he takes with the Republicans, maybe we'll get something of an indication as to whether that's the case. I don't expect an announcement, obviously. It's not a political speech by its nature. It's not supposed to be. What, if anything, do you think we can tell from the tone that he sets? I'm also told that he's going to point fingers at Congressman John Rose and others that he calls MAGA Republicans. How do you respond to that possibility?
Well, if he wants to call me a MAGA Republican, I'll proudly accept that label because I can say without reservation that the country that the 45th president brought to us in terms of economic prosperity, economic growth, real wages going up for working Americans, reasserting the power of this country to deal with our foreign adversaries. All of those things, I think we're headed in the right direction, getting our southern border under control for the first time in a generation. I think these are all things making this country energy independent again for the first time in my lifetime, having inflation at record lows, having employment at record highs, unemployment among African Americans and women and youth at the lowest levels in a generation or throughout my lifetime. I think that's a label that I'll proudly accept if he wants to throw it my way.
Congressman John Rose with us for a few moments, previewing the State of the Union address tonight. Obviously, the House of Representatives, Senate, Cabinet, U.S. Supreme Court, some members of the court will assemble together in the House chamber. Congressman, this is not your first State of the Union, obviously. They seem to be increasingly partisan as I've been observing them in my 20 years of watching politics on this level. What, if anything, do you believe Joe Biden will offer as an olive branch? Is there an olive branch where Republicans would potentially get out of their seats and applaud this president? What would that look like? What could it be?
Well, I think, as is the case with almost every president, there'll probably be some statements this president makes about America and about our strength and our history and the values and virtues of freedom and democracy. I think you'll hear some of that, and so I think there'll be some opportunities to applaud what the president says. But beyond that, I'm not sure. We've seen this president move already in response to the new Republican majority. Even before we took office, we took the majority at the beginning of the year. We saw the president relent finally on the vaccine mandate that had been applied to members of the military, and that's because he saw what the future would hold, and he was responding ahead of time. We've seen him relent finally on the COVID emergency because of legislation that we were advancing, and so I think you'll continue to see this president anticipating the messaging and the actions of the Republican majority in the House and trying to respond ahead of time and hopefully kind of mute that response. We saw him go to the border for the first time in his lifetime because I think he knew that the Republican majority was going to call him out for that. And so we've got a lot more of that kind of work to do, and I think you'll see the president moving at times in our direction. I think that the upcoming fight over the debt ceiling will be another occasion for that. It wouldn't entirely shock me if the president didn't maybe offer something on that front tonight. We need a reasonable, responsible, sensible approach to that issue. And the president saying, kind of stubbornly staying in his corner that I'm not going to negotiate, kind of like my 2-year-old son would do when he's not getting his way. That's not the answer, and I think the American people know that. And so I think the president is likely to try to look more reasonable tonight than he has in his rhetoric thus far on that particular issue. And there are probably a host of others where you could expect to see some movement, I believe.
One final question in two parts. I'll try to end on a high note, Congressman Rose. How refreshing will it be for you to, as you sit down and prepare to observe the speech, you look up and behind the President of the United States, obviously the Vice President, Kamala Harris, will be there, but beside her, Speaker of the House, Kevin McCarthy. How nice will that be for you?
Well, it will be nice. And, being in the majority has already afforded opportunities for us to move forward the values of Tennesseans in so many ways, and I think will going forward. And just knowing that there's a like-minded conservative sitting behind the president for the first time since I've been in Congress will be very reassuring. And knowing that the president's speech will not be molested at the end of the State of the Union address, I think will offer some comfort as well, maybe even for the president. He doesn't have to worry about his words being torn asunder.
Well, I'm planning on printing it out as soon as the advance copies are made available to us, and I'll tear mine up at home just for all of the folks listening in their homes. My final question was this, though, John. What realistically, and I know it's important to temper expectations about what the possibilities of a House majority in the Republican hands can potentially accomplish with the current president, and given the fact that the Senate is still in Democrat hands, what can we hope to see in the next 2 years with Joe Biden remaining as president? I mean, is it enough to tell the people of Tennessee, hey, we're going to hold the line. We're going to try to hold the line on deficit spending. We're going to try to hold the line on some of these other outlandish proposals presented by Democrats until such time as we get to 2024?
Well, I don't know if it's enough, and I don't think it will be enough, and I think we'll accomplish more. But we will hold the line, and I think that's an important first step. But I think you'll see the results of our oversight efforts, the results of the negotiations that we're able to achieve because of holding the House. And some things have to get done. So we will have to address the debt ceiling. We will have to address the appropriations for the government over the next 2 years. And so those are going to present flashpoints or points of departure where we can accomplish things. And so there'll be others that we might not be able to foretell or foresee as completely, but those are going to provide us with opportunities to actually move the ball back in the right direction and accomplish things that will advance Tennessee's values here in Washington.
Congressman, you know how much we appreciate you here back at home in Middle Tennessee. I know your constituents feel the same way, and I thank you for your time today. We'll talk to you again very soon.
Thank you, Matt. Thanks for having me on the show today, and thanks for the opportunity to represent the good people of the 6th District.
It is our pleasure. There's Congressman John Rose spending some time with us. Always good to speak with him. 2 congressmen on today, as we had Tim Burchett on earlier this afternoon. I think, I don't know about Dan Mandis in Nashville's Morning News, but I think Del Giorno had 2 congressmen on. He had Desjardins and who was the other guy? Congressman Ogles. Almost forgot about Andy.
Who?
Andy Ogles, representing the good people of the 5th Congressional District. You'd know his face if you saw him. You probably wouldn't recognize his voice. It's been so long since we talked to him. It's 2:51 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
Talking about the State of the Union address tonight, the Chinese spy balloon, and hey, the Tennessee Titans have an offensive coordinator. All that and more at 3.
Thank you there, Mac Maury. But I was so excited we gave you a little burst of music there. Hey, by the way, you're telling me that through the bill limiting city councils or to 20 passed through the committee, it's going to the full body of the House of Representatives, which
that's right.
That's going to pass. And also, I have an avocado story that I'm going to share with you tomorrow, Mac Maury, about the Super Bowl.
Ooh, okay.
Avocados are getting secure and escorted treatment from Mexico to the United States of America to make sure that people don't steal them. I'm not making that up.
Whoa.
So, plus, I'll give you the rest of the ways to identify a witch. A lot of people are requesting that. Right now, he's no witch. He's Brian Wilson, the one and only, and he comes up with the drive right now on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. See you tomorrow, folks.
It is 3 o'clock. I'm Mac Maury with your top stories. Right now, 69 degrees and a sunny day in Nashville. Weather and traffic coming up next. Some breaking news for the Tennessee Titans. They now have their new offensive coordinator. They have hired Tim Kelly. He was the passing game coordinator this year. The year before that, he was the offensive coordinator for division rival Houston Texans. And now he has been promoted to the offensive coordinator. That's after they have fired Todd Downing earlier this year, or last season. That's it for the Titans, and now have an offensive coordinator, Tim Kelly. In the nation's capital, starting